Hello, this is Ludica Pekina with GAI Insights, where we rate every news in AI field essential, important, and optional. Today, we have me and Adam and Ankash, and hope Paul and John
There's
join
one now. Oh,
it.
there he goes.
Here's Paul. That's great. So we have three reviews and four on. Okay, John, do you want to take over? We just started.
Okay, sure. Hey, good to see everybody. Sorry to be a couple minutes late here, or just on time, I guess. Good morning, everybody. Here we are, GenAI Insights, helping you with today's news. And we're starting off with how Morningstar did AI adoption on an enterprise scale level. Ankash, if you could introduce that, please.
Good one. So the first one that we have for today comes from Morningstar, and it talks about how Morningstar is using AI and GenAI as well on an enterprise scale level.
Awesome. Adam, what do you think of this one? Adam, are you there?
Adam just.
I think I may be now. I've been having connection issues. Have you got me?
Oh, okay. So what do you think of our friends here?
Are we all here now? Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good evening from Melbourne. Thank God it's Friday. I got the weekend here. I actually rated this as important. So Morningstar has a few things going on, but at the core, really, using, I believe it's Amazon Bedrock. Yeah, they
Yes.
They have built basically a connection between their enterprise intelligence and their employees, right? So whether it's a chatbot that can advise them on something, or someone who actually wants to keep a human in the loop and augment or supplement a process, they built that foundation that then they have a mechanism through which they can build applications and sort of interfaces on top of. So it's a little more than just use cases here, but then they give three really good use cases of how they're already applying this foundation they've developed as a framework through which then they can grow and expand and make all of these great gains and really realize the benefits of having the inference across their enterprise data. So I thought it was important to understand this approach, because I think as we get into compound systems, multi-model, whatever we want to call it, this is very much what people are going to be doing. They're going to figure out how to consolidate their data, unify that intelligence, and then start creating ways for their company to interact and interface on top of it.
Yeah, I would support important as well. When I did my book on self-made billionaires, we had an opportunity to interview Joe Mansueto, who's the founder of Morningstar, because he is a self-made billionaire. Fascinating, in terms of his approach, very thoughtful. He followed the mutual fund industry, figured that there was a need for a meta index like Morningstar, and just willing to make investments in the business to grow the technology base. I would agree with important. And one of the striking statistics in this thing was this notion of there are over 1 million products now, if you want to look at mutual funds and different investment vehicles. And the odd thing that some people may not know is there's actually more mutual funds than there are stocks. So it's kind of weird. There's more meta versions of how to buy stocks than the stocks themselves, which I thought was kind of cool. Anyway, others?
Yeah, I agree with important, because it's really, they're leading the way in this sense, that for putting the data to use, and this is really important to highlight.
Paul, you good with important?
Yeah, I'm good with important. I think it's another one in Crucible. It's a digital-based business, and I think it's another example of, right now, this is basically a search tool. So help me find and rate. And I think as we move more from the search to the answer economy, companies like a Morningstar will really show us a lot more here. And also, at least want to welcome Maria to the channel. She's starting to do some background support for us, and she's on here just to monitor it. And welcome, Maria.
Welcome, Maria. Yes, and sorry, go ahead.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to have you. And the other thing is, I think this goes back to our prediction about wins businesses. Here's a wins business, and we're 18 months in, 24 months into, these large language models, and we predicted just under a year ago that it would be 36 to 60 months for fundamental transformation of those businesses. And here we have another example, like our friends at S&P Global the other day. All right, Ankaj, next.
The next one that we have comes from MIT, and it talks about the new database of AI risks that MIT has launched.
Yeah, our friends at MIT putting together sounds like a pretty comprehensive view of risk in this thing. Luda, what'd you think?
Yeah, I rated it as important. It's a database that is really looks like very comprehensive. Ankash, if you could click the first link in the first paragraph, maybe. Oh yeah, you got it. So this is the repository, and you can play with it. Scroll down, Ankash, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay, here we go. So it shows how you use it. It has a taxonomy of risks. Go down, go down. There are little pictures of how they put it together. See, like right here. So it is pretty comprehensive, and it's a live document. So you could update it and see how the risks are relevant to you, what you can do about it, see the different categories of risks. So it is I would say, fundamental effort, important if not essential, to align the whole community on what are we doing with these risks. And and as an enterprise leader, I think you really do need to know that it exists and know the risks that are relevant to your enterprise.
All right. So we have a vote for important here. Adam, I think in the pregame warm-up, you had this as important as well.
Yeah, I think being done with MIT and actually in partnership with some researchers at University of Queensland down in Australia, they've done a really good job. I think it was 700 plus risks across 43 different taxonomies. They were very, very thorough. And it's really great to see someone pulling all of this together. And every AI leader should be grabbing this and making sure their security teams are aware of it, basically. It's worthwhile enough just to raise the awareness of it, but I thought it was worthy of important.
Paul, you good with important? I'm going there as well.
I'm getting convinced up, so I will support important.
All right.
Adam, we're very collaborative today. This is we're really off. Usually we're at each other's throats. Isn't that the fun?
It's Friday, Paul. But do you think we should go with essential? Because this is a notion. Well, let me just make a case. We just both said every leader has to know that this repository exists.
Yeah, I mean, I'd support essential. Because look, it's a comprehensive thing. They've committed to continually updating this. I was thinking about, sending it to some of my friends in reinsurance because, there's going to be this. I think there's going to be a whole new branch of cyber insurance. And, I don't know of any policies that are written yet, but you're going to have hallucination insurance and things like that.
Yep.
Right. And so, if I were an underwriter or, a developer, I'd certainly want to know about this thing. So, yeah, I'm good with essential. All right. Screw democracy. We're going for essential.
Well, that's the show I know, Adam. We're back.
We're back. We're back.
No, wait, let me make the case briefly for optional then, because I was on the other side of that fence. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, before you go, John, the MIT has this outfit that's called Future Tech.
Yes.
And they've been actually looking at how AI the various trends within AI field. And this is an interesting outfit, and it might be worth for our readers to check it out.
Awesome. And Michael Novak points out also that this is a valuable addition when you combine it with other commercial entities like Trustable AI, which I don't know if it's Trustable is spelt like that, but that's cool. But I'm not. Are you folks aware of this Trustable AI site? I am not.
No, I'm
Okay.
not.
Well, all right. Well, we'll take Michael's, admonition to look at that as well. And all right, so we get an essential here early on a Friday. Generative AI cornerstone, Ankash.
Hey, the next one comes from NUHS, and uh, they talk about how GenAI is a cornerstone of their healthcare IT strategy.
All right, for those of you who know the Singapore government and all, very interesting. Lee Kuan Yew, the place, very kind of straight out of Plato, the benevolent dictator who started Singapore on his modern trajectory. Um, had a very interesting philosophy about paying the government in order to increase competence and to decrease corruption. Singapore administrators are some of the highest paid government officials in the world. Like if you run, one of the big departments or so forth, you get paid over $1 million a year. So it's really interesting and very, very technology focused. When I was teaching at Harvard Business School, we had a whole series on Singapore's automation of government, which was pretty impressive. So here we have a continuing activity here where they've made this product called Russell that helps doctors and also has, seems like 2 levels of security at least. One is in the product itself, and then apparently there's a healthcare security framework of the government as well. But it's a short article. It's not big on details and so forth. And it reads a little bit like a vendor vendor article supported by AWS and Bedrock, who's working hand in glove with the Singaporean health ministry here. So I was going to give it an optional.
Yeah, so I'll jump in first of all and correct myself. The one about Morningstar, that was on Azure OpenAI. This is the one that was Bedrock.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Just for clarification, yeah, and it's basically a single. If someone's trying to make the case for why they should be using Bedrock in their organization, this is one use case for it. But that's mostly all it is, and about half the article is speculative with regards to what they plan to do with generative AI. So I had it as optional as well.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I made the same mistake on the first one as well. So thank you, Adam, for catching that. All
But
right.
it's interesting, optional for me. But the fascinating thing in Singapore that they find leaders of certain initiatives and
Yes.
try to get the best experts to
Yes.
lead. In this case, it's also the case. It's a renowned doctor that does operations and has pioneered certain types of operations. I forget what type, but he is there to actually looking at all this data and this whole system from the medical profession and how it will be useful to him, his staff, and Singapore at large. So it's a very interesting from inside out type of an effort, not IT people doing it.
Funny thing about that, you pay them well, you get good talent. My goodness. What a
Yeah. I love Singapore. I spent 5 years in there, so I'm a fan.
Yes. Well, you know what they call it? Disneyland with a death penalty. No, only kidding. Don't throw any gum on the street. All right. But yes, a well-managed city-state for sure. All right. We're heading into Falcon Mamba. And boy, Paul and I, if we have any time at the end, we've been out here in Silicon Valley talking to one of the large language model companies. And wow, it's just amazing that when you get into these large language models, how much money they lay down to develop these things. Anyway, Akash, tell us about Falcon.
Sure, John. So the next one around Falcon Mamba 7 billion parameter model. So it comes from the Technology Innovation Institute in Abu Dhabi, and it is suggesting a different architecture to our typical transformer-based architecture.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, here you have Abu Dhabi, one of the Gulf states, as many of them are trying to move to a post-oil world in the future using some of their sovereign wealth to invest in things like Falcon. What do you think here, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, Falcon's certainly on the radar screen as a promising open source model that's doing some interesting things. This is still pretty speculative and early. So for our AI leader, it's absolutely optional. But it is interesting to see how much progress they're making, and if in fact they can, catch some of the traditional foundation models, particularly some of the closed ones and some of the lineages that we're learning that's important coming out of DeepMind.
Yeah, I had it as optional as well. Alternative approach to transformers, but still, in a relatively small model and just early days. Adam, I think you had it as optional as well early on.
Yeah, I'll just call out one thing though, which is about this sort of different approach they're taking to these things. Ankaj, if you'll scroll down a little bit, it's just over halfway. There's a really simple graph. Yeah, right there. I don't know if you can zoom in on it, but what this is basically saying is they have this thing called what's it called? Parallel something there. Sequential prefill and parallel prefill. So they have this new mode here, and this has to do with the maximum context length, right? How much you can fit into the instruction. And all of those first blue dots, you see they're all around, well, it's basically 10K context length. For these small models, it's hard to get a really big context window. And then the one Falcon there is about the same, but that one that looks like it's maybe double the height, you have to understand that graph is going like exponential. That's actually 10 to the 9th K. So we've gone from 10K to 1 billion K in context window size. It's literally 9 orders of magnitude higher context window. And so that right there is a pretty incredible breakthrough in terms of the approach to how you continue to change what's in context to somehow almost sort of cheat and stream and create a much bigger context window within the limitations. So that's very cool, but generally speaking, it's I don't know how much of a difference this is making. It's another incremental change among the vendors in that sort of 8 billion parameter space.
And Adam, for the non-technical people, context window just means what goes into the box from a browser.
How much text you can pass at one time, yeah, or keep in memory. Yeah.
The difference here, guys, I'm sorry. Adam, go finish. Sorry.
I finished, yeah.
Okay, so the difference here is really how they approach it. And I'm glad that the Abu Dhabi money is going into this, because that will change how the bigger documents are ingested, right? So what they're doing, they are in difference to the transformer models, they keep almost like a tree of the text, and they built it. So they store the state and then they add to it, right? In difference to the transformer that does it sequentially. So if that transformer doesn't see the whole thing, it can build that state. These guys, if they see a snippet, they still can build a state. So ingestion of big documents will be way faster and will be way cheaper with this type of model. But you could see that on other metrics, they are kind of behind. They are maybe treading water. So this is the same, but they will certainly excel on the ingestion.
All right, so we're giving an optional but an important thing underneath. It's one of my pet peeves, and I guess I've got a bunch. But anyway, one of them is when people use the word exponential to mean big. This is actually exponential, so that's really big, All right, so we're giving this an optional, but something to keep an eye on as we explore post-transformer or meta-transformer architectures to deal with things like giant context windows. Ankaj, next.
The next one comes from Nvidia. So Nvidia has developed a technique through which they can do structured weight pruning and knowledge distillation to build new LLaMA models.
Wow, we're in the thick of the nerd patrol here when we talked about structured weight pruning and knowledge distillation. All right, Luda.
Wow.
How about that?
It's optional. But it is interesting. Ankash, if you could, there is a Nvidia post, right? If you can get that. So this is from Meta announcing that Nvidia took their model and did something with it. And then Nvidia got a little bit deeper into here's how you train the trainer. So they took the big model and then they pruned it this way, meaning breadth and vertical, and then had a very ingenious technique to monitor the loss of wisdom, right? And it worked. So we will see more and more on taking essentially a model from the open source and training it in this way or different ways for smaller on device and so on, and on cost. So this is interesting, but I think optional. Doesn't give our leader anything but just an awareness.
It's really interesting. Paul and I had dinner with the chief scientist at one of the large language model companies last night. And one of the things, and Paul, let you speak for yourself, one of the things I learned, I learned two really big things. First of all, how when they're getting these large language models to converge, where they start is really important because it's an infinite search space. And so the reason folks like, at least according to this expert, the reason folks like Falcon have a hard time getting the model to converge is they put it through training sets and training efforts. And those training efforts can cost anywhere from $10 million to $50 million each time they do a trial. But they can't get it to converge because the search space, they start in the wrong part of the search space. And what's fascinating is that the path dependence, once you figure out where to begin, and a lot of the converged mega models have a certain beginning point, which was discovered by the folks at Google DeepMind and Google and DeepMind together. And if you look at the lineage of those large models, it's that like where they begin in that stochastic process that allows the model to converge, and they don't really know why. And then that's one big thing I learned. And the second thing was around the importance of tuning the model after. And the simple analogy we thought of is, the large language model is like discovering crude oil, and then the tuning is like the refining of it. And there are very few folks who are sharing their refining capability with these models. So, and in there is an incredibly important set of path dependencies. So, if in the 5 petabyte coda of data that almost all the large language models have been trained on, if you begin with the academic research papers and then you go to the news and then you go to YouTube, you get a different result than if you start with YouTube, the academic papers, and then the news. And so I raise that here because when we talk about, state models and pruning, it's essentially the way I think about it is it's essentially one method of path dependency, which you then look at, what's the model behavior like as you go through that path dependency in the development of the model, and what kind of efficiencies you get and what do you lose or gain in terms of wisdom. So this whole notion of how you navigate the path dependencies in the stochastic model as you make it better or worse is just a fascinating area of exploration.
Yep.
The one note I wanted to make is I don't know if any of you caught about 2 weeks ago now there was the big SIGGRAPH Nvidia event, and Mark Zuckerberg actually flew out. If you get a chance, there's basically an hour, which is just Jensen Huang, CEO of Nvidia, and Mark Zuckerberg having like a one-on-one conversation, and they disclosed in there the 600,000 GPUs that Meta bought from Nvidia, and they have a very, very close partnership. So to when you see things like this, let's realize this is Nvidia doing research with Meta's model, right?
Yeah.
So if you wonder who's at the core of this, lockstep with Nvidia in strategy here, it's definitely. I mean, the most important thing out of this is probably that awareness about how tight that relationship is right now.
Oh, yes. And the other fascinating thing is that, I think of it as, symbol wildcatting. The amount of dough you need to go after these big models. I mean, we were talking last night, and some of these models and the training sets, they're spending $1 million or $2 million an hour. And it may take days, right, for the thing to even make a judgment call whether the model's converging or not. So, I mean, when you get into the hundreds of billions of parameters. So, this is the sport of kings, I tell you.
That's why it's great that Abu Dhabi focused on this state model type models and pushing it. So this is great.
Yeah, fascinating. Michael asked, are the weights and distillation processes proprietary or open to inspection? Meta, in its when it dropped the 405 billion parameter LLaMA model, they do share the weights, but they don't share the data nor the tuning. Other folks like Inflection will actually help you with the tuning, and Samba Nova will share the weights and do behind the firewall model development. But I don't know if they share their tuning capability. And in most models, tuning is about half the cost. So we're really exploring that now in terms of what, and none of the big guys will do the tuning. Very few of the big guys, Inflection will. But we're exploring how much of the tuning is transparent or rentable from the folks who are doing the large models. Paul, do you have a point of view on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely fascinating conversation. And some of the other conversation we had yesterday, John, was fine tuning as a service, which is something I hadn't heard before and thought of. It was really interesting. So we are in the early days, and I think one thing that was instructive about the meetings we had yesterday, was also with some of the very large companies, is what the infrastructure looks like for the enterprise, what this enterprise intelligence application framework looks like when you're looking for commonality across digital twins for all my employees, for how do I get the tone right, how do I get which data is behind the firewall in a hybrid environment, can I really rely on LLMs inside applications, Adam, or do I really need to have it outside of it because I want more control in the fine tuning? Where does the data sit when as a source of truth? Do I need to do vectorize all my data? I mean, there really is a breathtaking set of issues plus capabilities.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was amazing is one of these firms has built the world's most comprehensive copyright database to index to the 5 petabytes of content that's used to train these models. So, if you, from a policy perspective, don't want to infringe on copyright, well, somebody's got to go build that asset to tell you whether you're infringing on copyright or not. And these folks have built it, and that is a non-trivial activity.
Yeah.
So these like little utilities or little functions that massive, investments to do this stuff are really shaping the context of this. It's I don't know. I find it very exciting. I mean and I mean, talk about a spirit of pioneering. I mean, this is new stuff, and it's numbers, and it's a lot of work, and it's fun to watch.
Adam, I know we're wrapping up here, but one of the slides that this chief technical officer, this foundation model, showed us was all the subroutines underneath the foundation model, and it's breathtaking, the complexity and the orchestration, and we only got to understand maybe 10% of it. So these are complicated, advanced machines that really, really smart people are barely understanding.
And the path dependency, like how you put it together. I mean, the craft of, what sequence, what functions sit where is just emerging. So
right. I mean, the T in GPT is transformer, right? And if people just want to peek a little bit under the hood, just try and understand what a transformer is doing, right? And how that fits into this equation. It's like
that's the truth.
And but the maybe some big enterprises can afford what you're discussing, but when it gets down to the medium and small, they can't. They can't. So the as a service, Paul, will absolutely emerge. It has to, right? Because it can't be otherwise.
Well, but I think it's an interesting thing called, this own your own intelligence, own your own model. Is that just also sport a king? So is it just a handful of Fortune 500 companies can do that, and it will the big tech, product?
I mean, we've seen even a couple months ago already, Paul, that people are training their own models for under $100,000.
Yeah.
And so it's going to very quickly be even cheaper than that, and it's going to become very accessible.
Yeah, the other thing is, my guess is, look, somebody came up with a transformer and they figured out, where to begin in that, infinite search space. There's going to be other inventions, right? And these are the kind of inventions where, you figure out the right math to do this, or the right path dependencies, the right thing to start with, you could have, orders of magnitude improvement in a short amount of time. So, and yeah, Michael says model as a service. Absolutely, sure. It's going to get. One question. Let's see. Would Blackwell make a difference regarding the accuracy of LLMs? I'm not sure if questions are allowed here. Yes, questions are allowed. No, I don't. Other than I think it's less about Blackwell making a difference in the quality. Yes, I mean in terms of the compute it can put together, and for example, one of the things when you look at the performance cost trade-offs, one of the reasons that OpenAI's responses have been getting better lately is that they are reprocessing the prompts 16 times before they show them to you. So, you look at something like Blackwell, can Blackwell help make that happen more efficiently? Then the answer is yes. So they can improve accuracy, but it's really a symbiosis, I think, among the mathematics, the craft and the skill of the scientists who are doing it, and the technology underneath it. So I don't think it's a single factor thing.
No.
You're not the spices alone or the fish alone is not going to make the great stew, right? It's the combo.
Yeah.
And John, explain what Blackwell is for folks who don't know.
Blackwell's the high-end Nvidia chip. That's got a massive, and they're having a problem with the bus. So the dual architecture thing. It looks like they're just pumping out the one Blackwell chip. After the what was the one named after Hopper? Named after Grace Hopper, the Hopper chip. But they're working through the quality issues on that bus. All right. Let's see, Michael Novak, John, we're in a silent movie era. We'll be in 5-10 months or years. I think, look, I think there's going to be, because the adoption of this stuff is an organizational capability, I think that over the next 5 to 10 months, there's going to be a lot of surface level backlash on AI because there's a lot of people who don't understand how that this is an organizational capability. You have to build. It takes time to teach the organization what this stuff is and how to use it. Everybody's going to cite another one of my pet peeves, the Gartner hype cycle. They're going to say, "Oh, we're past the hype cycle." It's like, look. Anyway, the hype cycle is unempirical and unhelpful. Other than that, it's great. But people are going to quote that like crazy and say we're in the trough of disillusionment. And meanwhile, what's going to be happening is two things. The big companies are going to continue to invest in these models and drive it forward, and there's going to be all kinds of new learning. And then the folks who are starting to lead are going to pull ahead because they're going to build a symbiosis between their ability to deliver better economic value, progressively transform the organization, and skill their people to create productivity that's going to blow away whoever their competitors are in the industry. So just remember, during the trough of disillusionment, if you're a believer, you're going behind faster. So that's my opinion of the wonderful Gartner hype cycle, which is a bad way to do strategy.
Adam, one of the reasons we need a bigger context window is to capture all John's pet peeves.
A billion will just about do it.
We'll just cover it.
All right, so here we have the big tote board, an essential. Thank you, Luda. All right, with risk and our friends at MIT managing the risk part. I wish they were managing large models too. Come on, we got to get those guys to keep going. All right, then we have a bunch of optionals with Generative AI, Falcon, Nvidia, and Morningstar, and Joe Mansueto taking a wins business and driving it forward with excellence. There we have it. Have a great weekend. Paul, do you have our Monday? Oh, we lost Paul. All right. I don't know what we have for our Monday Learning Lab, but I know when it is. It is at 7:30 Eastern, and I hope to see you all there. And good luck with your AIing over the weekend. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Happy Friday.